Hello, everybody. Today is that really rare case when the target audience for this particular episode is literally everyone because we're all fans of something or someone. Fandom is our topic today, and we'll be chatting with Lauren Webb, Commercial Director, Insights and Analytics in EMEA at Dentsu Sports Analytics. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
First things first, fandom. How do we define the term to ourselves within Dentsu, and how do we work with fandom from our business standpoint?
Well, the short story is that, as you just mentioned there in your introduction, it really is the crux of everything in sport and entertainment. Not to be cliche, but I guess fans are the heartbeat within that. But it's still important to realise that fans are people, and therefore understanding them is key, which is kind of where our business sits within that. So one of our taglines, or our tagline that we work with as a business, is we move at the speed of fans. So we understand fans better than anyone else, and we're very much about exploring their intentions, their receptivity to sponsorship, and really linking those to behaviours and actions that they have. And I think within that, we kind of cover every stage of the sponsorship marketing lifestyle, and fandom really sitting at the heart of that to kind of link back to that overall tagline. And so, we're looking at the alignment of fans within sport and entertainment, the understanding of their wants and their needs, their reactions to things as well. All of those things are such a key part of sponsorship within sport and entertainment. But I think part of that that's really key for us as well is that not all fans are created equal. And I think that's a really key element too that we kind of stand by as well. And, it's really easy when you kind of talk about fans, as you said, fans are everyone, and they can be split out, and you can look at football fans as a whole and you can talk about football fans, but actually there are so many segments within that. And, what we love to do is to be able to break those segments down, understand people further. And, a lot of what we do is link that to their receptivity to sponsorship, so when brands and rights holders are working together, do their fan bases align? Do you have those fans that are going to be receptive to the sponsorship that brands are providing? And, that's a really key element that we want to break down within fan bases further.
Well, there's a lot of philosophy there. Like, not all fans are created equal. I love that.
Yeah.
So, as a marketer, I always kind of connect fandom and communities or community marketing. So, like generally the idea of creating certain groups of people with the same values.
Yeah.
So is there any difference in this case, fandom versus communities?
I would say that fandom is really multifaceted. So your roots into that passion can vary. And I think we were talking the other day, and there's almost 10 C's that you can come through. So, whether it's looking at, the players, or we can call or the manager, so coach, captain, the teams, so your competitors, your country, is it the league, is it your friends and family? So there's so many different entrances into fandom that I guess that kind of would be where I would sit, whereas I guess community fandom maybe is a bit more around one core element that links them all. So I think that's where we see fandom, I guess, sitting differently. And I guess the other bit, although they probably do overlap a bit, is when you're looking at fandom, it's a lot more about feelings. Like, it's a really emotive topic, being a fan of something, and therefore, how you phrase things and the way you put something forward, you need to act on that feeling and that emotion and that passion, rather than maybe more of the factual side that sometimes comes through other sorts of marketing.
If it is about feelings, my next question will make a lot of sense, I hope. So how do we measure the efficiency of working with fandom? Like, what are brands aiming for when they want to connect or engage with fans?
So I think that really varies brand by brand. So we could probably go on for this for the whole time if we wanted to talk about it. But it really varies by their brand objectives. And, I think that's a key element, is that, when you're going into any sort of partnership, you're wanting to kind of set what do you want to get out of it in the first place. So clearly, at a base, there will be some brands that go into it and purely they're just wanting to look to sell more of their product. So that could be a key objective, and you therefore measure that off the back of it. You have those. So, for example, Rolex in sport is massive. They sponsor so many different rights holders and and areas. But actually for them, it's not necessarily thinking, oh, every fan is therefore going to go and buy a Rolex because it's a high value product, but actually theirs is about engaging more in the hospitality that sport and entertainment can bring. So that's a different objective again. Lead capture being really key is you're tapping into a new audience that maybe you're not already attracting with a brand. So that's something else that, having a new, base that you can talk to. Then there's also, I guess, the more ESG community side of things. So I'll probably talk a bit about Cadbury throughout this, but that's really key in aligning values, getting involved in the community, understanding environmental impacts and being vocal about those things. And it's really important that rights holders and brands align on those two things. And then education as well. Actually, a lot of brands are looking to kind of utilize their platform through sponsorship of actually educating more. I take TeamViewer, for example, as of that. So they are front of shirt for Man United men and women, but actually have recently just come about with a sponsorship or a partnership with the Women's Sport Collective, because one of the key things, I guess, especially linked to their Man United women or Man United ladies, is that they want to get more women into sports tech. So, there's so many multifaceted aims that they want to do, and those things therefore can be measured off the back of it. And I guess, linking back to that, there's a core measurement in sport, which is very much about exposure. That's a core element that everyone measures. It's across the industry, about eyeballs, being able to just understand how many people you're reaching, basically. And but I think for us, that's clearly a really important first step, but actually it's about taking a step further to understand what that exposure means for the brand and what it translates to. So another element that we look to measure is actually the IP. So when you associate a rights holder with a brand, how does that uplift the brand's intellectual property? So it might be that a brand is looking to get more attention. It might be that they're looking to kind of push their conviction, connection, or perception. And what we can do is look and see how, for example, if you had an advert that just had a standard actor in it versus a sports person, how does that change, and does that uplift the IP? And therefore you can utilize that to match brands and rights holders effectively, and then measure afterwards as well. And I think when you talk about how we're measuring what brands are looking for in having that, in the end they want to connect due to the vastness of the audience and the engagement that fans have. It really is that scale piece that they can gain from a sponsorship.
One of the metrics that really stood out to me was the ROX, return on experience. So again, the usual thing would be the ROI, obviously, right? And I mean, it's a blessing when you can measure the return on investments. But in this case, experience, to me, it's kind of a very fragile and a multifaceted concept as it is. So how does that metric work exactly?
Yeah, so basically our ROX, or return on experience, is basically all about on-site measurement. So when brands activate at an event, it's basically about understanding the footfall. So we have beacons that we can put to track footfall past that activation, and also on-site surveys. Really, it's about engaging with those fans in the moment, and sort of, rather than, I guess, a look back and try. So you're engaging them in that moment. How is that activation making them feel? You can sort, is it successful? That type of thing. But I guess part of that is then it's also important to follow up post that, to then be able to look back and see if that has been a sustained change in their behavior or not. So someone might say something in the moment, oh yeah, this is great, but actually have they then gone on to do anything else with that brand? And I think it's about the importance of on-site activation is you need that to, I guess, engage, especially the younger generation as well. Sometimes you can see that they might have barriers in their way to going to a live sport or entertainment event. What can you do to attract what added extras? And that's where activations can come into place, and therefore measuring their success is the way to then convince, I guess, other brands, other rights holders to make sure that's a part of their wider scope as well.
Okay, an interesting one here. So there's this thing that marketing can never fix a poorly performing product. And in a way, that is very true. So in this particular case, if slash when a team or an athlete is performing really poorly, like does that really impact our attempt to fix the fandom marketing community kind of thing?
It's a very good question. I'm not sure I have an example, so I'm not going to be able to give you a definitive answer on that one. But I'm sure, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Fandom is an always on thing, and it's so
Exactly.
affected by, performance. So yeah, I'm sure there are, but I mean, you'll know this better than me. Is there such a bad thing as bad marketing, or is it just, if people are talking about it, whether it's in a bad way or a good way, it's still being talked about and linked back to that athlete, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So
mean, bad way is anyway an encouraging way in this case. Yes,
exactly,
like you can
exactly.
do that. Right? That type of thing. Lovely. Let's talk about the inevitable topic here, Gen Z.
Yeah.
Let's do some myth busting here.
Yes.
So I think like there are probably two key things, two key pathways here. So first of all, these guys engage with content completely differently, and our most recent studies show that it's somehow important for them to be a part of a certain community.
Yeah.
Plus, in this particular case with sports and fandom, I think that it's thanks to them, sport has become very digital and very three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no longer just about watching a game, but it's about looking further into behind the scenes. There are some online discussions, there are memes that are being shared, and so on and so forth. So how are we helping brands connect with that vastness of everything that Gen Zs are via fandom and sports?
So yeah, it's a big topic, and as you said, there's
Yeah,
a
there's a
lot of
lot.
myths out there, but there are a lot of changes. So it is a really important topic because they are the future for both a fan base, for a rights holder, but also for brands. They're your future customers as well. So getting that right and understanding how to reach them is really important. I think the one thing that's really interesting is when you look, and as you said, they utilize so many different platforms, but actually almost that scope of breadth of platforms has actually resonated with more than just a Gen Z age group as well. So you see that actually people are interacting with content around sport, and we just recently did a future of fan engagement event around football in particular. So we've got quite a lot of examples from a football perspective. But yeah, there is that sort of thing where you hear a lot of myths about them having no attention span anymore, that the younger generation are just, exactly, everything's one little thing, they just want to watch highlights, they can't watch a whole match. I think what was really interesting from our research off the back of that was actually in an average weekend you'll see both 18 to 24-year-olds and the average population both watching about 2.2 matches on average. So they're still engaging in those core ways, and they're still watching the majority of a match. I think it's something like 2% less than the average.
Okay.
So still watching most of the match. I think it's about 78% of it. And also TV is their still most used platform for engaging in football. So I think those are like good things to clear. But of course, as you said, there are still a lot of differences. And I think that community piece is really, really key. So they are engaging a lot more online. So fan-led content or fan-created content is really a new key area for them. So I think it's over 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds engage with fan created content, which is a lot higher than other age groups. And then also we can see that they are also talking, over 80% of them are talking to other fans throughout, whether that's on something like WhatsApp or on other platforms as well. So as you said, that community piece is really important. But where we do see the drop off is that live attendance as well. So actually
Okay.
it's maybe they are more reliant on speaking to people virtually and digitally rather than, I guess, going to the matches and engaging in person. So that's kind of that balance, as you said, about where actually are you going to reach them. That may be more on those digital platforms. And I think what's quite interesting that is YouTube is a really important platform for them. And I think I was listening to something the other day, and it's taken over as the place people go most for podcasts, so quite relevant here.
Yes.
But so such
Good that we're on
big...
the YouTube right now.
exactly. And so we'd asked where people would go first for, if they saw an incredible moment or piece of skill in a football match. And for the 18 to 24-year-olds, over half of them said they'd go to YouTube as their first point of call, whereas for the older generations, it would be more, maybe waiting for match of the day later on, so waiting for TV highlights or going to a standard football website. So I think there is a change, and that's why we said, you can't group just fans as one group. They are all different, and therefore you have to, approach and have targeted, ways and which channels, you go for to suit each age group as well.
Just on the back of that, do you think that approach that Gen Zs have to engaging with sports now actually change the game itself, be it football or solo sports?
It's a good question. I think that you see when you're watching football and some of the major channels, they now go, okay, if you're watching it online, you can watch this angle, or you can have a watch long, or you can watch with your friends. So I think there's definitely an impact where it's that everyone's having to adapt, as you want to attract new fans into sport, you have to adapt to that. And I think, one of the things we're doing as a business is, we understand that they are the future, and it's really important for us to engage with, 18 to 24-year-olds and understand all these elements. So we've actually recently launched Future Forward, which is an opportunity for us as a business to work closely and build rapport with 18 to 24-year-olds and really understand their way of thinking and their actions. And so we invited, anyone who wanted to apply and basically partake in the program. And that's kind of taking on things like work experience, mentoring, preparation for coming into the sport and entertainment industry, amongst many other things, through workshops, socials, key themes. And actually we've just selected our final lot, so we've got a first, I guess, intake of 13. We're utilizing some from our team already, and then some external as well, which is really exciting. We've got the first event at the end of this month, and actually, again, very relevant now, the first theme is how they're consuming audio. So radio, podcasts.
Okay.
So I'm sure we'll have to feed back afterwards.
Hitting all the right notes there.
Exactly. and going. And I think we've got Chris Stark, who's ex-Radio 1 and works currently on Capital Radio Breakfast, coming in as well. So, getting those outside speakers engaged. And I think, it's a really key topic. And actually, from the survey that we talked about earlier for the fan engagement, actually podcasts have seen the largest growth in the past 5 years in terms of fans using it more to follow football than any other channel. So that growth, podcasts have seen the largest growth. So yeah, it's that's quite a significant change in terms of how people are following football. And so we utilize data throughout, and we're going to do that throughout Future Forward as well. Almost setting the scene, understanding how sports fans consume radio and podcasts, but then get the Gen Z's cohort's views on this. And we're running that as a 4-month program, and then we're going to do a second one starting in August as well. So keep an eye out for details on that one as well.
I mean, podcasts, growth, music to my ears, marvelous. So, in general, 2024 is going to be the year of big media moments, and half of those, I think, being sports events. How do we approach that? Are we ready for that as a business? And how are we making sure that there is going to be growth and impact as a result?
Yeah. So I think, as we mentioned earlier, with the fact that we're always on as sport, I think the one thing we take from it is that actually every year is a big year for us. So it's, I think, in the press and that side of things, I think because of the Olympics being so close, because they're in Paris, clearly it has that element where it feels closer. It feels that there's really big. Clearly you've got the men's Euros too. But if you look to next year already, we've got the women's Euros. We're hosting the Women's Rugby World Cup in the UK. So, straight away you're kind of going, okay, we never stop having big moments and big events in sport, which is amazing. I guess it's probably why it's such a great platform. But also, in linking to Fandom, it's why Fandom is always on too, because, those big summers of sports now just seem to be every summer. But we will be on the ground working with clients at both the Olympics and Paralympics. So, it's really important to, take learnings from these events and utilize it in what we do. And clearly with our recent Future of Fan Engagement in Football event, that was very much linked in terms of the build up to the Euros, and we'll be continuing to produce thought leadership throughout the summer too, especially around the Euros and the Olympics. But clearly that will continue onwards with the fact that sport is always on too.
Another question that really is important. How is this matchmaking process set up? So how are we making sure that the right brands with a certain right set of values are matched with the right sports teams and brands? Because to me, well, one case was really amazing and really interesting. An alcoholic beverage brand was sponsoring a sports team. How exactly is that happening, and how are we making sure that, I mean, like
Yeah, of course. And there's so many almost rules and guidances within sports sponsorship now, is that you have to get those right, and they have to have an understanding and meaning. So I guess putting my data and insight hat on, because that's my background, that is a key element in kind of the starting place for it. But if we're looking at, I work within Dentsu Sports Analytics, we sit within MKTG, which is why we're able to kind of cover that full sponsorship life cycle. And it's about that mix between data and insight, but also that human touch being really important. Like, however much I love data and I find it really interesting, and it does set such a great basis for everything we do, you need to have that human creativity to build on top of it for it to come alive and still work. So as I said, I'm biased, but every decision we do is entrenched in data and is a crucial step. But yeah, there's so much more to that matchmaking process, and that nowadays is very much about values aligning. And I think that's the sort of something that's changed within the industry, is that we've very much moved from sponsorship to partnership, and that is very much aligned on values rather than just, okay, I want to be on the front of a shirt, that logo's on there and nothing else is said or done about it. It's actually going, we want to align on those values, we want to be doing more with that partnership, and sort of brands are looking, they want more from partnerships, rights holders also are. I've had numerous conversations with rights holders who've actually turned down brands, even though they're maybe offering a larger value for the sponsorship or the assets. They've actually turned them away and gone for someone who's actually offering a lower value, and that's purely because they don't align on the values. And I think that's like an important, that it's coming from all. And I think most importantly, especially in relation to the fandom theme, fans want more as well. They want to understand why that's doing. No one wants to, I guess, rub fans up the wrong way either. So like if a rights holder partnered with a certain brand and that didn't work well with fans, fans have such an important say nowadays, especially with the digital age, that it's so important to get that right. I guess within that, a really good example is, so we work with Mondelez on a global basis, and in the UK we work with Cadbury as part of that relationship, and Cadbury have 3 core values. So they have generosity, which is, I guess, how they show up, how they give back to loyal consumers. They've been around for 200 years, so at the moment they're celebrating their 200-year anniversary, so all those things are really key. They have their heritage, so their factory and their roots are in Birmingham, and that's something that they always want to make sure kind of flows through their marketing. They have and then community as well, so they have a really big focus on employee engagement, inclusivity, and also giving back as well. So I guess when we're thinking about any activations we do with Cadbury, it has to cover those 3 values. And so, their ambassadors and their rights holder partners have to share in these values. So I guess one good example of that is Grenfell athletic. So clearly, following on from what was a terrible tragedy, one connecting factor for a lot of those affected was their passion for football. And so, but I guess with the events, they didn't have a home, and so actually Cadbury partnered with them to create a training ground, and they worked with all their Premier League partners to donate equipment and to set that all up. So now they actually have a home, and that connection has continued. But what's really interesting is Grenfell talk openly about their values too, and the fact that they would only partner with brands who actually wanted to get involved hands-on and make a difference, rather than thinking that the link would just look good from an outside perspective. So I think it's really important that like the values clearly work both ways, and you see sort of brands and rights holders you needing that to get something over the line as well. So
Yeah. That's the same really sophisticated set of rules apply to how brands pick their ambassadors in sports. For example, man ambassadors and women ambassadors. Yeah, like male and female kind of sports.
yeah, so I think it definitely does have an effect, and it's hard. So I guess if we just take Cadbury again as the key example there, so ambassadors are a massive part of their football connection. And actually in 2017, when they still had their Premier League partnership, they used legends in their campaigns, and that included Alex Scott. And then if we fast forward to 2024, we see that Cadbury have a host of female ambassadors, which include people like England captain Leah Williamson. And part of that value alignment is that Leah is really passionate about her charity and that side of things. So it really is, a continued allegiance for that. And I guess from a Cadbury point of view, it shows that they were supporting the women's game from day one as well. It isn't just utilizing female ambassadors because they feel like they have to. And I think from a data point of view, looking at it, we ran to understand, I guess, when you have a female ambassador versus a male ambassador, what is that connection like from a fan perspective. And I think what was really interesting there is that actually a female ambassador captured more attention and connection. So I think they see it as the forward, seeing, someone like me on the screen, whereas males, scored higher in conviction, and both, were really equal on perception. So, what we find is that it's not about almost putting them against each other. It's about how does that combination work? And actually it's the combination of male and female ambassadors together that works best and really resonates with the audience as well. So I think there is a really important part. And I think with all of these partnerships as well, is it's not always just about what the ambassador can give to the brand and to the rights holder, but actually what they can give back as well. So for example, the Aston Villa women's team, the Mondelez give them access to business coaching experts, career development. It's a lot of that is about thinking about post football too. And I think that probably goes across both the men's and women's game and all sport is, however much we love it, it's amazing. It is a shorter lived career. So having that future thought as well is really important. And combining those two things together is important.
That's fascinating, like how different the perception can be in terms of like who the ambassador is.
Yeah.
And it's a short-lived sport, as you say. We started this conversation with a discussion around like how to measure the efficiency, what are the results of us working with fans. But let's take it one step further and let's talk about some sort of a bigger impact rather than just numbers as the key metric, because, well, at Dentsu, we are trying to adopt that mindset that we are trying to impact bigger things. So how are we working with Fandom in the marketing for good cause mindset?
So it's at the forefront of everything now. ESG, so environmental social governance, is a really key element of most partnerships now. There is that added element, and so I think it's that is something where when we're building those and when we're thinking about activating, you have to take all those key objectives into place to make sure that everything you're doing aligns to them and pushes those forward. And it's interesting because sport has with the fact that it has such breadth and reach, it has a really important role in educating the fan base as well about those key courses. Sometimes you do see that it's like, okay, fans, as we said, are at the start of everything, and they might, encourage or put pressure on those brands and rights holders they interact with. But actually, at the same time, if they're not, the brands and rights holders who are in front of them have that responsibility to educate that way. So I think that's what we see happening a lot in sport and entertainment. So that's how we try and involve as well.
Do we have any cases in particular to illustrate that good cause kind of thing?
I think probably the main ones are the ones we've talked about already. So I would say sort of the Cadbury side of things. For example, with the deaf community, that was something that Cadbury was really important to Cadbury, and so some of their campaigns leading up was working with their Premier League partners, football club partners, and meeting some of their fans who may be deaf, and actually speaking to them and understanding what they need from their football experience as well, and how it could improve. And I can talk from my experience of now, when I'm at a football match on the big screens, when you say you have the halftime entertainment or that side of things, there is always a sign language interpreter on the screen as well, so that actually it's so much more inclusive to everyone. So I would say that's a campaign we were very much involved in with Cadbury. So that's one example of how we're sort of looking at the wider and being fully inclusive as well.
Really cool. I have a final super complicated question for you.
Oh gosh.
What are you a fan of?
What am I a fan of?
Yes.
Well,
spill it out.
I think probably I'm exceptionally lucky that I get to work in an industry that I adore. So I am first and foremost a sports fan, and that is pretty much every sport under the sun. But from like a consistency base, I would say football and tennis would be my two big ones. And then I'd say probably very close second, food. I'm a big fan of food and eating out.
Okay, Lauren, thank you so much. From the biggest fan of naps, I just salute you on this marvelous episode. And this has been the short story of all things fandom within Dentsu.